Alright, looks like for whatever reason we're not going to be able to go live on Facebook today. Let me just share this real quick to the group. Alright, we're just going to have to go with this today. Alright, welcome back to BILT Weekly Live, where we go over everything real estate with an AI and automation touch. First off, thank you for tuning in tonight. You could have been anywhere in the world, but instead you are here with me. I definitely appreciate that. Let's get right into it. If you're new here and you're watching from YouTube or Facebook, there's a Facebook issue today, so make sure to check out the YouTube channel. There is a link to the actual Zoom that you can join in the description. So, when you're actually doing the Zoom, you'll be able to see more of the shared screen stuff and so forth. So make sure to jump on that. Of course, we do have a few updates as usual, but today we'll be primarily focused on a topic that no one talks about. So make sure to stick around. This will be one that's going to be a game changer. If you guys have a specific topic you want me to go over in the next week's live, please reach out and let me know. But as usual, we're going to get right into it. So as far as some updates and stuff like that, there's a few things that are coming about, in regards to UI changes and so forth, for the better, of course. So do keep in mind, if you see some changes inside of the system, just know it is for the better. And of course, we'll be releasing new tutorials as we can, for all the newcomers as well, because as new UI changes happen, that means our tutorials become outdated. So do keep that in mind. We're doing it as fast as possible, but we're having some new UI changes pretty much every single week right now. But it is for the better, guys. But with that being said, let's pretty much get into today's topic. Again, no one really talks about this, and I think the reason why is because everyone pretty much wants to try to get people into like a mentorship or into some sort of program or some sort of very, very specific niche, right, in real estate for acquisitions, dispositions, and so forth, right? But today's topic is going to be on market versus off market for deals, both in the acquisition sector as well as the dispositions. We're going to go over the pros of each. We're going to go over the cons of each. We're going to talk about costs to get started for each. And of course, why BILT can, make your acquisitions cheaper, more efficient, and so forth. So that's the goal for today. Of course, for the usual, shameless plug, make sure you guys are liking the video, sharing the value, and of course, supporting the channels as much as possible. We plan to give you guys free education every single week, and we will continue doing this for free as long as you guys are supporting the channels. So if you haven't done so already, make sure to like and subscribe to the YouTube channel and like and share on Facebook to share the value. I appreciate you all. But let's get right into it. We're going to do this. I think last week you guys liked me going into more of like a spreadsheet style, really deep in dive as I'm thinking, as I'm going through the process. You guys like that a lot. So we're going to pretty much do the same thing this week. And then, of course, we can always make some changes for the future lives as well. But to jump right into here, let me share my screen real quick. Let's leave Facebook. Let's just pull this up. A blank slate. Let's talk about this for a second, right? There's on-market deals, there's off-market deals. People say, oh, don't do on-market. People say, oh, don't waste your time with direct-to-seller, off-market leads. People are saying a bunch of things, right? And we don't really or truly really know what that really entails and why we should go which direction. If you're a beginner, if you're a pro, you're advanced, you got more money, which route should we realistically go, right? So there's going to be a few things that we're going to, really talk about. I want to kind of break this down in a way where, we're going through this together and really taking a deep dive understanding from start to finish, right? So let's just break this down. We're going to call this on market versus off market deals, right? And inside of this, you're going to have, of course, your on market, and we're going to compare this with our off market, right? Now, there's a few things to consider, right? When we call any type of property, typically we're looking at the 4 pillars. We're really trying to just understand their motivation, their timelines, their prices, the property condition, and so forth, right? Well, in a sense, price point and property condition, there's nothing more you can do about that. That's what the seller is going to ask for. But when it's on market or off market, there's still things to consider, such as motivations and timelines, right? That's actually really important for both. And so we're going to actually take a look at those. So we have motivation, we have timelines, that we can go over. There's going to be how many touches on average maybe it takes to close a deal or acquire a deal, so forth. There's going to be stuff like dispo rates. So if you are doing wholesale, dispoing the deal does matter if it's on market or off market. And we'll talk about that as well. And then, of course, we'll ultimately talk about like assignment fees, as well as, let's say, flip profit if you are flipping, because it does make a difference, right? And so when we actually look at this on a value, let me actually make this a little bit bigger for you guys so you guys can see this. And then we'll kind of get right in here. So I like to break everything down as simple as possible so we can really do some sort of analysis. You're welcome. So we really understand what the truth is here, because everyone can say whatever they want to say, but if you don't do your own due diligence in anything, then you don't know which direction you should realistically be going because you didn't do your research, right? So we're going to do the research here for you. But let's talk about this, right? Motivation. When we call off-market leads, direct-to-seller leads, right? Typically, the most common struggle with that is we're going to call a bunch of people. Typically, we use, let's say, VAs to cold call. Maybe we're doing some sort of blasting technique or whatever to reach out to these off-market leads. And we're really not getting those kind of results, right? But and usually when they respond, its majority is going to be negative, right? 99% of them are going to be negative, if not 99.9% are going to be negative, saying, hey, I'm not ready to sell, right? So if we look at the motivation aspect of things where leads are off market, there's a reason why they're off market. If they were really truly interested in selling, they would have A, put it as a FSBO, B, they would have hired an agent, right? They would have done something to put it on market where it's visible that they're actually interested in selling, right? Now, granted, people could be in denial, they could be in foreclosure, they could be a tired landlord, there could be so much more, excuses as to why they want to sell, right? But at the end of the day, if we really look at the motivation, they're not really that motivated, right? In this instance, right? Versus on the other hand, we have the on-market leads. Think about it like this. Not only did they say that they're interested in selling, but they physically went to a real estate agent and not only shook their hand, brought them to the property, and had them take pictures and signed an agreement for a 6-month period to sell the property. If we compare that to off-market leads that are not really motivated versus someone that's on market, who here is really the motivated one? It's going to be the on-market properties, right? You can't beat that motivation. So in this case, I like to consider these people, of course, super motivated to sell. Now, granted, a lot of them could be just asking for top dollar, especially in unrealistic markets and so forth. There's going to be many excuses on that department as to why they want that top dollar, right? But that's besides the point. That they took the initiative and they signed an agreement with an agent. They are officially, ready to sell. Versus, let's just say you get a PPL lead or a PPC lead on the off market. They're still not as strong as someone who put the house on the market, okay? And they signed an agreement. So do keep that in mind. Another thing is going to be the timelines, right? Timelines in here, I want to say it kind of interchanges as well with the touches as well. So we'll kind of look at this together. But timelines with agents, they have a 6-month period. They have a deadline, as the sell, of course. But realistically, if we look at properties, and every market's a little bit different, some houses sell within the first 90 days. Some houses sell within the first 6 months. Some don't even sell at all and they become expired, whatever, on the on-market ones. Off-market, you could literally be targeting someone for 200 days and they're still going to tell you no, right? 300 days later, they're still telling you no. 1,000 days later, they're still going to tell you no, right? So it's like, how fast are these timelines when it comes to being on-market versus off-market? To simplify this as, based off of experience, right? We can just say at least the off-market ones, we know they're going to be slow, right? And in this case, typically on average, it's around 12, 13, maybe hell, even 14 and 15 touches nowadays, on average, to be able to close someone who's on the off-market direct-to-seller route. All right, so let's just put an average of 13 touches for this moment on an off-market lead. Now, again, that could be still 200 touches, but also you could close someone at one touch, of course, depending on the scenario, your luck, the situation that they're in, how good you are on the phone, and so forth, right? But on the other hand, on the on-market ones, we could say these ones are, let's say faster, right? Doesn't mean that they're super slow. They can be, right? But they are definitely faster to sell than the off-market leads. Reason being, again, they only signed an agreement, right? And the agent's going to do everything in their power. There's a third-party person involved helping them market, helping them try to sell this property. Right? So, of course, it's going to be a little bit faster than the off-market leads. As far as touches go, I like to say this again just because experience-wise, it's definitely nowhere near close to how off-market leads are. You're going to touch them a hell of a lot less, right? Because if an agent agrees and you build rapport with an agent, typically they're going to try to convincing, and now you're going to have that agent on your side to help convince the seller as well. So again, it's not going to be half, of course. It's definitely going to be a little bit more higher on the touches, and stuff like that. But let's just say it's more of like an average of 8 touches instead of 13 touches. When you look at this from a large scale of data of like 10,000, 20,000, 100,000, it's still a lot, right? You're still doing a lot of touches overall for both of these on-market and off-market leads. But the difference is it's close to half as far as, you work on the same amount of leads, you're probably going to lock up more deals on market than you are off market. So let's just look at that face value. The next thing we have, of course, is disposition rates. So if you're actually planning on wholesaling the deal, right, in this instance, well, we got to be realistic and understand the buyers, number one. But if we look at a general, and we're generalizing this, dispositions, most buyers, would prefer a off-market deal over an on-market deal for, multiple different reasons. Pride is involved, price points involved, the ability to lock it up and say that, oh, I got a deal, their competition and stuff, they are able to get it off market, and basically if they want to daisy chain it, or they want to, do some sort of exit, maybe long term, being off market has some benefits, right? And so most of the time buyers are going to want them off market. That doesn't mean that they're not interested in on-market deals. A lot of them actually aren't, so you do got to take that into consideration. So always, of course, know your buyers first. Try to build a relationship with buyers before you start locking up deals, or use a disposition company to help you dispose those deals. Just make sure that they're okay with more on-market deals or off-market deals and so forth. So in this case, as far as dispositions rate, we can say the rate is higher on off-market versus it's lower on on-market deals. So even though you might lock up more deals, the disposition rate is going to be lower on the disposition side. So which one is better? Well, it depends on your buyer's list at that point in time, right? The next thing is going to be your assignment fees or flip profit. Well, on market deals, it's not as easy as you think to get really good deals, right? Number one, due to ignorance of a seller, like on the off-market stage, they might be ignorant to price points, ARVs, and so forth. They don't have an agent whispering in their ear, telling them, oh, this is what market value is, and so forth, right? So for this instance, again, you're going to have lower assignment fees on the on-market deals versus off-market. You could probably have higher assignment fees or higher flip profits in either instance, right? So again, going back to this, assignment fees, a flip profit it's going to be lower on off-market deals, and of course higher on off-market deals. Now, looking at this before we get into any costs or anything along those lines, like if we just look at this right away, if your goal is to get a deal as fast as possible, where would we need to be, right? Would we work on the off-market deals? Will we work on the off-market deals, right? And so just by looking at this, we can say, okay, we're able to lock up a deal faster on the on-market, but we make less money, let's say, or there's a chance of dispositions or whatever being a little bit lower. So, and then if we look at the off-market side, it might take us a while to lock up that deal, but we might make a lot more money. So if you're a new person, you're like, I'm going to get a deal tomorrow. just by looking at this, you probably want to stick to on-market deals, right? Now, granted, you do have to learn to talk to agents and some other stuff, right? But looking at this as well, we're not really looking at everything in an analysis point as to what does it actually cost to actually do both methods, right? Because you can go the off-market route and still be profitable and more profitable than on-market route. And also you could go the on-market route and be more profitable than the off-market route, depending on how efficient you are, depending on, you know, where you get your data from, depending on how you're cleaning your data, depending on how you're marketing to that data and so forth, right? So there's different acquisition strategies. We all know these strategies, right? There's, you know, cold calling, there's SMS, there's mailers, there's cold email, you know, there's PPL, PPC, there's so many different things out there. You know, I'm sure there's some unique ones as well. You know, you go and talk to wholesalers, you talk to agents, you know, and so forth, other types of acquisition. There's no right or wrong answer. It's just what is the most optimal, what is the cheapest cost in the long run, in order for you to, like, we like to talk about cost per acquisitions a lot, you know, when we get into real estate and we start scaling. The last thing you want to do is make $100,000 a month and then your expenses are $80,000. What's the point of that, you know? Or maybe, you know, you're making only $10,000 but your expenses is $8,000 per month. It's possible, right? Especially if you go certain routes and you hire VAs, and or maybe you're doing PPL, you know, paid per lead models. They do become super expensive, you know, a lot of the way. So what we're going to do is actually we're going to break this down once again, right? We're going to deep dive into this. I'm going to use a sample size for this example. So let's just say cost, let's do a sample size here of 10,000 pieces of data, okay? I think 10,000 pieces of data is a decent amount to look at. If you go with any tools like PropStream, Batch Leads, Deal Sauce, any type of house folios, X Leads, all of them will pretty much give you at least 10,000. So that's a pretty good number at the moment to look at, right? As far as the sample size. So looking at that right away, right, you're gonna have a few things to take into consideration, right? You're gonna have, let's just say PropStream is where you're getting your data source. It could be Batch, could be the other ones, right? They're all pretty much the same price, right? You're gonna pay a monthly cost for something like that. You might also pay for some sort of CRM, right, to keep your data organized, be able to market to them, whatever, right? There's going to be a cost involved with that. There's going to be some sort of cost in regards to skip tracing if you are going the route of off market. So do keep that in mind, okay? And then also there's going to be scrubbing of data, right? So scrubbing data. In this case, you're going to have emails. You're also going to have, you're also going to have phone numbers. Now, depending on what strategy you go with, you know, you might not scrub emails, you might not scrub phone numbers, whatever, right? But it's good to know that you need to understand the costs of cleaning your data as well, because well, the most common thing is people like to take data from a tool like PropStream, from a tool like XLeads, from a tool like, you know, Deal Sauce, whatever, and they like to upload it directly into CRMs. That is a no-no, guys, okay? That is definitely a no-no. If you start doing that, you're going to get a lot high opt-out rates. You could get suspended for texting someone that's a landline, and because you didn't clean and make sure that their mobile numbers and so forth. You could send emails to the wrong email, and it could bounce. You could ruin your domain reputation on your email services. So there's a lot of things involved with that. So there is a cost to marketing, of course, we need to take into consideration. So right here, I'm going to do a little sum at the bottom here. I'm going to call this cost of data, just so we can kind of get an understanding right here. And for this purpose, let's just clean this up a bit. So we're actually like really clean right here. But let's look at this, right? If you were to, no matter if you go on market or off market, you're still going to use a tool. You're still going to use this CRM. Either way, it's still going to be the same exact thing. Tools like PropStream are going to be around $97 a month, you know, Deal Sauce, whatever. CRMs are going to be around the $197 range for good ones and so forth. Skip tracing here, it just depends on where you're skip tracing them. So if you're using tools like PropStream or Batch skip trace, you know, it might be around 10 cents skip trace. So let's just put 0.1 over here, and we can do a math calculation in a second. Let's also make these a $sign so we can kind of keep track of things. So based off this, right, just looking at this, if we look at on-market deals and when you look at off-market deals, The only ones that need to be skip traced, if you're using a tool like PropStream, right, or an alternative, is going to be your off-market leads. Okay, the seller's information, the seller's phone number, the seller's emails, and maybe relatives and so forth, right? It can get pretty costly, right? And so on the other hand, the the on-market leads, we actually do not have to skip trace. And the reason being is because tools like PropStream, Batch, DealSauce, all of them come with agent information because they have access to the MLS, or they pull it from like Redfin, Zillow, whatever. All the information is really public. So in this case, we're going to have zero cost for skip tracing on market deals. But on the other hand, you're going to have a significant cost on the direct seller side, or the off market side. So if we look at this and we say, okay, well, we have a sample size of 10,000, right? Well, then I still got to multiply by 10 cents a lead. Well, that's going to cost me an additional $1,000 on the data that I'm already buying from a tool like PropStream or somewhere else, right? Again, you can get this cheaper. There's tools out there that can get them as low as 2, 3, 4 cents, lead, but you got to have bulk data, right? I'm sure there's tools out there that might do H or whatever. So like that's something you got to play around with, and which tool you should use and whatnot. But this is, again, example purposes. We're doing this, something where I'll give you guys this spreadsheet at the end. It doesn't really matter to me, where you guys can plug and play your own numbers as well. But going over here to emails, right? Let's say you wanted to clean your data. You skip traced it, or maybe you got your data with all the values, phone numbers and emails. You still got to scrub that data. Make sure that the emails are valid emails, that when you send an email, is not going to bounce. If it bounces too much, you start landing in spam more. Same thing with the phone numbers. We want to make sure they're mobile lines, especially if we choose to text them later on. There's a lot of compliance involved with things. There's a lot of what we call error rates in the texting side. Same thing. We don't really want to be calling a number that's invalid. What you're wasting your time. And a lot of people do this even when they give lists to their VAs, right? They'll pull a list of, let's say, 50,000 leads, and then just hand it to the VAs because they don't want to spend, that $5,000 or a certain amount of money, of course, to scrub and clean the data, because phone numbers can cost, if you're using a tool like Phone Validator, it would be like, not even 4 cents, a fourth of a cent, it costs to clean that data. But at the end of the day, it is an extra cost, right? And in this instance, right, if you're cleaning this information, you're going to have a sample size and that fourth of a cent. So that's an additional $40 just to scrub 10,000 leads, right? And the same thing is going to go for pretty much on market as well, because we can't trust tools like PropStream and so forth. So we just need to make sure we are keeping our data clean, right? On the other hand, emails are a lot cheaper, right? And by the way, like I want to say, it's not just because it costs money that people are skipping the scrubbing. It's also because it does take time, right? To scrub phone numbers will take, depending on how much data, it could take 5 minutes. It could take hours, right? Waiting on it to load. Email is the same thing, right? Like it could take days, right? Depending on how much data you have. So it is a process, and I know the reason why people want to be so fast, they're in a hurry to get deals, but then in reality, they're actually wasting their time targeting, sending emails, calling people, sending text messages to unknown numbers, to unknown emails, and it just ruins or slows down their business overall. So do take your time, guys, on this regard. But in this instance, for email validation, we use tools like Bulk Email Checker. So I'm actually just going to copy this over from Bulk Email Checker. But essentially, to validate an email, it's actually not that expensive. I don't even know what this is, like not even a ninth of a cent. So like it basically doesn't cost anything. 10,000 leads would probably be around like $10 or something. So it's not a significant cost. But in this instance, again, both off-market and your on-market leads here need to be verified if you go down the route of like sending LOIs and blasting and so forth, which is something that BILT does. So going back to this, you have that additional $10 cost right there, right? Now, if we were to sum this up just on the data, right? We're not talking about anything else right now. On the data, pulling it from PropStream, organizing it in some sort of CRM, right? You're talking about for on market $343, right? And then again, switching over to something that's more off market, $1,343, right? Just because of the skip tracing cost right here. Now, again, could you get this for cheaper, right? Let's just say 0.8, right? Absolutely. Oops, wrong, my bad. We need a 0 right there. So of course, you can get it for cheaper, right? And therefore your cost will be reduced. But just do keep in mind, the more data you have, the cheaper it will get. But if you don't have that bulk data, then you're paying the premium. But that's how that would go in that regard, right? So there's your cost of data. But one thing we got to realize though is when you're cleaning this data, you're no longer left with 10,000 as your sample size, right? Because you just cleaned it. That data is unavailable. Phone numbers are wrong, emails are wrong. So really, the clean data that you have inside your system, right, is more along the realm of, let's just say, as a percentage, just through experience, even on a high case average, maybe around 60% is really valid, right? So it's really good to understand, sure, you started with 10,000 leads as your sample size, but in reality, let's say you're only left with that 60%, right? And this goes for both, your on market or off market. Data providers aren't perfect, and we got to understand that. No matter which data source you go to, you're going to find inaccuracies, especially once you start scrubbing the information. So if we go back over here and we say, okay, well, we clean that data, right? So out of the 10,000 right here, we're only left with, let's say, 6,000 that's actually clean, right? And let me actually move this over here. So now you're only left with, let's say, 6,000, right? So going back to now, what is your actual cost per lead in this instance, right? It actually is a significant difference, right? So cost per lead right here for, let's just say, your on market deals are definitely going to be a lot cheaper, because we don't have this extra cost of skip tracing and so forth. But you still have the 343 divided by, let's say, 6,000 leads. In this instance, how much are you really spending on, an on-market lead, right? And then again, if we do the same exact calculation on the off-market leads, what does that look like over here? So definitely a lot more expensive. You're talking about roughly 20 cents versus 5 cents. You're spending a lot more money because of the skip tracing. But that's as far as cost per lead, right? Now, again, before we move on into other methods and other, acquisition strategies in specific, just by looking at this data right here, if you're a beginner and you're first getting into real estate, right, and you're on a budget, do we really think we're going to be going towards the off-market range? Just by looking at cost of data here, would it be wise to go towards on-market or off-market just by looking at this? If you're someone who's in a 9-to-5 and you're not really available to really work on your leads, and you're using systems and automations and so forth to kind of automate a lot of stuff while you're at your 9-to-5, and you have the money and the budget and everything, it doesn't matter which route you go, right? As long as you're comfortable talking to an agent or a seller or whatnot. Because again, you might make it up for in the assignment fees, or make it up for in the flip profit, or any type of ROI, in the long run. So do take it into consideration. But overall, if you're a beginner and you have no idea what you're doing and you're limited on budget, I would definitely not go the direct to seller route here. It's definitely more for seasoned people who are willing to spend to learn, because it is a learning curve, right? And a lot of you guys are joining mentorships, joining softwares, joining so many other things, right? Courses, communities, and that's already an initial cost up front as well. So you do got to take that into consideration. Most people think you can come into a tool like, for example, BILT, right? Because of our bold claims of, oh, we can send LOIs, we follow up, we send, offers, we're sending contracts to them. It's completely on autopilot. Cool, but there's still the cost of data right here, right? There's still going to be the cost of usage. There's still going to be the cost of pretty much just knowing where you're getting yourself into, and can you actually sustain that cost for a long period of time, especially if you're a beginner and you're kind of not comfortable being on the phones, right? If you're not comfortable being on the phones, that means your close rate's going to be lower. That means you're going to need more data. That's going to mean you're going to need more follow-up. You're going to need more systems, whatever, right? To make up for your lack of conversation skills. So do keep that in mind. But let's get into the next part, right? So you have this data, right? regardless which route you go on market, off market, you know, you chose to do one of the two, right? It's irrelevant now at this point. You made your decision. But now the next stage is, well, what are we doing, right? We're either cold calling, we're doing SMS, we're doing mailers, we're doing emails, right? Some sort of thing along those lines. And again, right, I'm not talking about other strategies like buying leads, PPL, right, or starting Facebook ads and like that's more inbound traffic. We're talking about outbound traffic methods right now at the moment. So in this instance, we have cold calling, right? And whether you do it yourself or you hire a VA or something along the lines, right? You're gonna have SMS, you're gonna have mailers, you know, sending mail, and then of course you're gonna have email, right? Email is more of a newer one. I think it started more in other business models like e-commerce agencies and so forth. It finally just came more relevant in the real estate industry, but it's definitely a powerhouse in there as well. So cold calling, you know, we got to understand that there is a cost of calling, right? Whether you're using a phone system, you know, or you're using your own cell phone or whatever. If you're having systems, primarily, if you got 10,000 leads, you better have a system. That's a lot of data, right? To kind of go through. And so there's going to be usage costs for cold calling. There's going to be usage costs for sending a text message. There's going to be usage for sending mailers, right? Cost per mail going to someone's mailbox, right, at their house. And of course, there's going to be usage for cost of sending an email as well. Now, granted, you could say, well, I can go the free routes and use my cell phone, right? And because I have an unlimited plan, and I can call, I can text, and I can email on my free Gmail account, and that's cool, right? But we're talking about a business here. We're talking about scalability. We're talking about 10,000 leads here that you're working on. If you were to do that from your personal cell phone would say spam likely after probably the 1,000th call, right? Same thing with your text messages. You know, you might get flagged on your personal cell phone if you send that many text messages. And then of course, Gmail as well. If you send more than, let's say 100, 200, 250, you know, over a period of time, you know, let's say in the same day you try to do that, you're also going to get flagged, landing in people's spam inboxes. So it's not really a reality to use your personal assets for those things, or your personal cell phone or your personal emails. You want to be thinking of this as longevity. You want to think about this as a business, having business emails, having business phone numbers, and so forth, right? You know, this is marketing 101 here, right? Don't be cheap on the marketing side, because you will regret it when you get suspended, right? When your personal line gets disconnected because you were non-compliant, let's say, or your personal email becomes, you know, irrelevant and no one can receive your emails anymore because you decided to be cheap, right? So just keep that in mind. So in this instance, well, what does cold calling cost, right? Let's just say you were the one calling. Let's talk about the cheapest possible right now. You're not hiring VAs. You're doing everything yourself. You know, of course, there's time that goes into this. Well, what does it actually cost to call somebody? And again, this could be plus or minus. These are some averages. There's actually some costs that we have in our system based off Twilio and so forth, right? So cold calling, right? You know, it's a ninth of a cent, right? So that's how much it costs to call. Maybe you have inbound calls that are a little bit cheaper or whatnot, right? But let's just use that as a standpoint right here. And so when you're actually calling those 6,000 leads right here, right, there is a cost involved, right, of calling those people. And so for this instance, it's going to be, you know, $56, right? And let's actually make this oops, my bad, guys. Switch this back so you guys can see. So there's going to be this initial cost, right, of you calling all 6,000 people, right? And so this is what we call usage. Again, right, you could get that unlimited phone plan. You probably call on 6,000 people. Good luck, right, keeping yourself organized. But the same thing goes for texting, right? There's a cost for texting. And again, right, you can look up these numbers online. You can pull up Google and see the average online of how much maybe it would cost to maybe text, especially on the text blasting side or text follow-up side and so forth, right? You want to know these numbers. And the reason why I'm plugging these in here, because I want you guys to take this spreadsheet at the end and go do your own research as well and plug in these things. And this way it'll make your guys' life easier when you're doing your research in the long run, right? So again, you're going to have was an eighth of a cent when it comes to SMS as well. And so we can pretty much do the same exact calculation here and move it down. So we have another cost right here on this route. Next off, we have mailers. Now mailers, you could spend 50 cents, you could spend $1.50, right? Just depends on the type of mail, depends on how much mailage you're sending at one time. You know, so many other factors are involved, coloring, yada yada, images, so forth, right? But I'm just going to use an average here and just put it in the middle and just say it costs $1, right? And again, you could get it cheaper, right? You can get it to 50 cents, but I'm just going to use this as an example here and just say we are spending $1 to send a piece of mail, right? And again, if we do the same exact calculation here, you know, and just drop it down, it's going to cost 6,000. If we switch this to 50 cents, right? Let's say you're getting on the cheapest side possible, it's still going to cost you $3,000 to send those 6,000, you know, properties. Again, could you get it cheaper? I'm sure there's probably people out there that might do it cheaper. You could do it yourself, right? You could print them out. You can do it all yourself and manually go to people's houses and you could do it yourself, of course, right? You could do everything cheaper. But if we're talking about hiring people, hiring companies, you know, using softwares out there to do it for you, there is going to be a cost involved, right? And then, of course, finally, we have, of course, emails. Emails is going to be the cheapest of them all, right? As far as what exact this number is, I'm not even going to attempt to try it, but you can kind of see right here how much it pretty much costs in regards to sending the same exact 6,000, right? Let's say you were sending 6,000 LOIs, right? Or 6,000 offers, or 6,000 introductory emails, or 6,000 whatever, right? It will only cost you $4 to send those. Now, yes, there is the chance of going to spam, just like there's a chance of you going to spam likely when calling, just like there's a chance of you not being delivered an SMS, you know, just like there's a chance of you sending those mailers and the dog eats it and it doesn't get delivered, right? Every single one of them, you're gonna have deliverability issues and so forth, right? So do keep that in mind. Right. But if we look at this again, right, and now we look at it from this standpoint, right, these are our brand new methods, right? So here we have our cost per leads, right? We're already spending money for those leads. We're already spending this money for the data, right? And you know which route you're going now. Let's just say you chose the on market route. You chose to be on the cheaper route. You're still going to have these additional costs right here. Again, once again, I'm going to repeat, yes, you can use your phone, but it's not scalable. Okay. So looking at this again, which route do you think someone who's brand new that's just starting out and that doesn't have a budget should go? Well, probably email, cold calling, and SMS. Mailers, put it aside, right? Now, if you are someone that just wants to do more inbound, right, I would say mailers and it's probably more inbound. They're going to call you physically, right, if you give them your phone number. But you could do the same thing with SMS. You could do the same thing with email. It's just you got to send a lot more of those as compared to mailers. Now, going into, you know, I mentioned this earlier, right? Well, the whole goal with BILT, right, is cost, efficiency, speed, right? Making sure that we have everything all tied and tailed, right? At the end of the day, there's something what we call cost per acquisition, right? If it's already costing you, let's just say you were to work on the same sample size of 10,000 data and you got one deal on the off market and you got one deal on the on market, just looking at this, which one has a higher cost per acquisition? Well, the one that has the 1,000, right, automatically the cost of data right here is going to be higher as far as a cost per acquisition if we're just looking at that information alone, right? But on the other hand, you might actually have better results on whichever process, right? And your cost per acquisition could be lower in either case, right? So we need to take that into consideration as well as far as your skill set. But again, if we're just getting started in real estate and we don't know which route to go, you know, it's like, oh, that was the question I got earlier from you, Gia. It was like, oh, we want to shift into wholesaling. We tried it before, it didn't work out. We're trying to get back into it, but we don't know which route to go. Should we go on market? Should we go off market? Should we, you know, wholesale? Should we fix and flip? Should we do whatever, right? And should we do more on, you know, agents or sellers or whatnot? So this should give you a general idea of like which route you should probably choose. You know, it is completely up to you on that regard, right? But why exactly should, like, moving forward and actually like going into like systems and automations and so forth, right? Why do we talk about BILT so much, right? Why am I wearing this BILT hat? You know, what does it stand for? It stands for Building Innovative Logistics Together. We're here to do it together. We're here to lower those costs as much as possible. Cost per acquisition should be as low as possible, and output for us should be as high as possible, meaning we should only be working on the most important leads as possible. You know, if you're just cold calling all day long, well, then you're getting a lot of rejections all day long, pretty much, right? No, 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 no. 99% of them are going to tell you no, right? Versus SMS, which used to be a great tool, is no longer, because of compliance and government and you know, Twilio and HUP 10 DLC. There's so many other factors involved with it, and people are getting suspended left and right for cold blasting SMS. Mailers is still a valid tactic. The only problem with that is it is a higher barrier to entry, as you can see from those costs. And of course, you can still gain good results. And then, of course, there's email, right? But why BILT? BILT, we focus mainly on email, right? And we do use SMS for follow-up. And of course, you have every ability to call as well inside there. But what we primarily focus on BILT is the LOI blasting, meaning you upload this data from PropStream or Batch or DealSauce or whoever, right? Maybe you get it from Redfin and you pull it into PropStream and re-export it with the property values. It's going to evaluate the deal and determine what deal type is best from cash to creative. But also at the same time, it's going to send that LOI, right? It's going to send this offer. It's going to send all 6,000 of those offers, right? At a cost of like $4, right? In this instance, right? And it's going to follow up with them as well, because not everyone's going to respond, right? Sometime it might land in spam. We might need to send a follow-up message. We might need to send a follow-up text message and so forth. But when we look at cost per acquisition wise, right, we're talking about a huge difference automatically if we're just focusing on email, right? And a lot of beginners that come here and they're like, oh, well, does email work? I've never heard of it in real estate, right? Well, it goes the same thing to say, well, what's the difference between you sending an offer, a lowball offer through mailers, right? Saying, hey, I'm going to buy your house 30 cents on you know, on the dollar, right? And people calling you inbound and you sending an actual official LOI through email. There's realistically no difference. The only difference is you got to send a lot more emails, of course, you know, to get responses. But the primary goal is like, we're trying to aim for what's called a response rate, you know. Let's say a 20% response rate would be ideal, you know, for everything. On market, you might get higher. Off market, you might get a little bit lower, you know, of course, just because the nature of the people in denial and so forth, right? And agents are in the business to reply to you. But the thing is right here, if we're trying to be more efficient, if we're trying to be here on speed, right, is calling going to get you to where you want to be? Right, as far as speed goes, how long is it going to take you to cold call, you know, 6,000 people, you know, if you're by yourself? Well, no offense to Americans, but I don't believe we're even capable of making 100 phone calls a day, right? Versus a VA can call on a 4-power dialer 600 leads a day. So you tell me what your capabilities are on that. Same thing goes for SMS. Due to compliance, like, we can't just send 1,000 SMS messages, 2,000 SMS messages like we used to, right? Now we're very, very limited, if not allowed at all, right, to do stuff like that. And so we're forced to do more follow-up in that regard. Versus emails, you could send all 6,000 at one time if you had a proper infrastructure as far as like domains and so forth. Or maybe you do it over a course of a period of time. It goes back to, what do we want to do here? Do we want to be doing more cold outreach, or we want to be doing more inbound warm outreach, right? People coming to us saying, yes, I'm interested, right? If we're looking for people that are, yes, I'm interested, mailers, SMS, and email are always going to be the most optimal choice, right? SMS no longer due to the circumstances. Mailers and email are still very, very valid, right? And of course, if you wanted to go even further, you could go into more PPL, PPC, and so forth, which is spending a lot more money as well. But if we're talking about efficiency, still getting that inbound factor, email is definitely the most popular thing out there right now. It's definitely the cheapest thing out there. It's definitely the fastest way to mass blast, because there's not really any limitations besides, you know, you having more email domains, right? More email services, we like to call them, our marketing users. And so if you're able to do it that way, you're going to have those lower costs. You're going to have a lower cost per acquisition. You're going to have basically just, all you're doing is just uploading data and responding to people who responded to your offer, right? That's the primary goal with that. It's the same thing how mailers work, where, you know, they call you inbound and they say, hey, I saw your offer, I'm okay, but I want more money, right? That's basically the same thing. They're going to do the same thing with you in email. You know exactly, they know exactly what you're willing to offer and so forth. So you can actually have something to negotiate on at that point in time. If we go step back and we say SMS, right? SMS, you can't really do that because you can't really send a full letter of intent while you're text blasting. Especially you can't do attachments like PDFs. You'll definitely get flagged and blocked. And then of course cold calling, unless they answer, you know, most scripts aren't, hey, I can offer you X dollars on your house. And then the first thing you're gonna hear is rejected, right? At least 80% of the time, you know, if not more than that, on that price point. So that's not really a feasible route as well, let alone time wise, right? So if we go by time, we also want to be taking a look at these as to how long they'll take, right? So cold calling the longest, right? As well as mailers will always be the longest. And then you're going to have SMS is always going to be the fastest as long as if you can get away with compliance, right? And then email will always be the second fastest as well in this regard. So that's as far as breaking this down step by step, you know, making it as simple as possible for you guys for both the on-market deals and the off-market deals. I hope I was able to, I guess, solve most people's concerns, or maybe if you had the question but didn't know how to ask it, or maybe you didn't know how to analyze it. I hope this like helps to get an idea, especially if you're brand new, especially if maybe you've never done an on-market deal or off-market deal or vice versa, you know, opened your eyes a bit in regards to what things cost per data, you know, cleaning the data. A lot of you probably don't even know what cleaning data is until maybe you get into it, and really truly understanding your cost per lead and of course your actual marketing outreach strategies. So once again, like, I hope this was helpful. I hope we were able to get some sort of value out of this. What I will be doing with this is I'll post this in the Facebook group for if you guys want this. So if you're not in the Facebook group, go join that. But we'll post it over there for everyone to have, just so you have access to this and you can play around with it, make a copy and so forth. But any questions on this? So we're going to be opening up to Q&A and just checking in with you guys and making sure you guys are all good. But in the meantime, if you guys are watching on Facebook or YouTube or wherever, the Zoom link is in the description. I know I got to repeat myself on that. YouTube is still not friendly for us. But also if you're on those platforms, make sure to like and subscribe, or like and share the value. We definitely appreciate it. But moving on to you guys in here in the Zoom room, any questions? What's your thoughts on everything I went over? Like, Gia, I know we spoke earlier before the live. Did this help you, I guess, answer some of your questions or concerns that you had?
It did. I've tried, well, we did try just about all of the strategies you mentioned. The only one we haven't is emails, and I didn't even know that,
Most
that
people
was
don't.
a thing.
Yeah.
With sending emails.
Yeah. Well, when you tried the other methods, you were talking about cold call, SMS, and mailers, right?
Yes.
Okay, like as far as like a sample size, what were you doing at the time? Because I know you said you tried, but it didn't work. What was your sample size?
With SMS, I think we did. I think the most we did was 5,000. With the mailers, I know we didn't do much with that because it was probably more along the line of 500 to 800, and I know you have to do more than that.
Yeah.
Cold calling, we did in between 5 and I would probably say 10,000, and we actually had hired a cold caller, but we just had issues with the company.
Yeah, the typical thing when you don't do it in-house, you're gonna have issues with VAs. But you mentioned SMS, they used 5,000. What happened with that?
We had gotten what is that, FC, whatever the approval is. We had gotten through all of that.
Okay.
The leads that we got were not what we expected, I guess, because at that time we were doing mainly tax delinquent. I had a massive tax delinquent list, so those were the leads that we were targeting.
Okay. So tax delinquent list. Was it like the data was just inaccurate, like phone numbers wise?
Some of it was. They would, we would get responses that I don't know who you're talking about. You have the wrong number.
Mhm.
Some of the responses you would possibly get through cold calling, just not as bad. So I
Okay.
think it was probably the data.
Okay. So in that case, I would say, well, I don't know who is in charge of data, but scrubbing those phone numbers does make your life 10 times easier when you do text or call, because you're not wasting time on those that are wrong data, wrong information, or the wrong person or whatever. Um, you know, were you guys doing that back then?
Well, I think we were using I don't know if am I allowed to say the skip tracing company?
Yeah, that's fine.
I think it was Kind Skip Tracing.
Okay, yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, I've heard of them. One of our other clients just uploaded like 60,000 leads into our system from them, and I guess there's some complaints that 50% of the data was inaccurate, even worse than
Yes,
the normal. Yeah.
yes. Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, that is what it is, though. It's data inaccuracy. There's nothing really we can do about that. Everyone's gonna have data that's incorrect, right? No matter where you go. I really don't care the company. They can charge you premiums all they want. The moment you put it into a data scrubbing tool, it shows the truth, the reality, right? And again, they could be 90% accurate, but they're still not 100%. You know what I mean? No one's 100% on that aspect. So do keep that in mind. That's why like we spend those additional 40, $50, to scrub the data, even though it takes more time than money, but it does save us a lot of time on the calling and texting and emailing side of things. We're not wasting our time and usage costs, let alone on that side as well. So yeah, but yeah, I mean, if you haven't tried email, I mean, I'd suggest it is the cheapest route to go. Whether you use the system or you try it out, on your own. Email is definitely the cheapest out there, in that regard.
Okay.
Yeah. Cool.
Well, I appreciate it.
Of course, yeah. Of course, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Let's see. Everyone else in here, I see we got Tango Property Group. I don't think I've met you. Maybe I have. You just have a different company name up here. Are you with us?
Yeah, I'm with you. Sorry about that. How you doing?
Doing
I
good.
came in late, man, so I was like the bad student that came in. I came in around 30-minute mark.
Oh
So I'm
no,
sorry
you're the
about
bad student.
Yeah.
Luckily, I was one of those bad students too, but I still got straight A's. So as long as you get the straight A's, I don't really care.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. But where are you at in your real estate journey?
Well, I got out the game. I just got back in the game. I basically lost my shirt 2008, foreclosed on about 2.5 million in real estate. I'm not sure if you're familiar with home investors.
I've heard of them. Yeah.
They're the We Buy Ugly House people.
Yeah.
They're the franchise, the ones with the cape, man. What part of the world are you in?
Oh, I'm in Georgia.
Oh, okay. I'm in Atlanta, so yeah.
Yeah,
So
I'm probably like an hour away from you.
okay, so yeah. Well, then we buy. I had a franchise, so that just got back into the game like
Mm-hmm.
last year. I was taking care of a family member, so I was out of the game for about 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
Got back in 2018, got out 2018, got back in 2023. So I'm just ramping up. I'm trying to figure out, should I do an SMS? I've done some PPL stuff, do like high speed to lead Zolo. So I just want something, I'm just trying to build it. Actually, I'm in no pun intended. I'm in the build stage. Yeah.
We're all on a build stage. Isn't that how it is? We're all here to grow and continue building for the stars.
Sure.
But yeah, I guess like you tried all these methods. Like, have you not singled one down to be like your preferred method yet?
I was thinking, and just listening to the young lady that just spoke, I was thinking actually starting with launch control, doing some SMS stuff.
Mm-hmm.
With launch control, I tried some cold callers. It was cool. I think I was cold calling like 10,000 a month. I got one deal after 2 months, so 20,000 leads got me one deal. Um, so
What
I
was your
mean,
cost per acquisition on that though?
yeah, cost per acquisition probably 6 grand.
Oh shit.
Yeah, $6,000, but I made
That's
17
why we
from-
push people to BILT, you know, about for
Yeah.
the $350 to $600 cost per acquisition, you know, on the email side.
Yeah, and
But,
I like what you said about. I like what you like. I said I came in late, so pardon that.
yeah.
But I like what you were saying about the email. But I
Mhm.
know she said she used skip tracing, and I guess I missed this part. So scrubbing, you where can I go to? Do I have to? How do I scrub it?
Well, no matter where you get your data from, right? You know, once you skip trace, or maybe the data came with it, you know, skip traced pre, you want to throw into tools like Phone Validator or Bulk Email Checker. There's other tools out there too. I'm sure there's more expensive ones and cheaper ones out there, but you really want to put it into a tool like that because here, I'll just pull it up so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. So if we
Okay.
go back right here and we just go to phonevalidator.com, right? What this is going to do is most popular search. It checks the line type for you, checks the phone company. Also, it checks the fake numbers. And of course, you know, it'll also include are they like on the DNC and so forth like that as well. So it's really important to check that. I know DNC doesn't really matter for us anymore due to the new laws in certain states. And I'm sure in Atlanta we'll get that as well, where we can, there's no such thing as DNC for acquisition. But this is, you know, it doesn't cost that much, right? If we go back to this, like on this leads, it didn't cost that much. It cost $40, right, on the 10,000 pieces of data, but it does take time for it to be validated, you know, so do keep that in mind. And the same thing goes for Bulk Email Checker, right? Because we use this all the time as well. Let's just say I log in. What you're really doing here, or maybe I should have went to the website for you. Do this again, just so you can kind of read about it, right? We're basically checking, hey, is this email valid, right? And so here, I don't know why I went out of it, but let's sign back in. I'll just show you some data that we're currently, you know, verifying right now at the moment. So I just verified some data, right? Some buyers lists or whatever, and 68% of them passed, right? This one, 83% passed. And just we're talking about emails here. And I can make this bigger for you as well so you can see on your end. But it's like you just uploaded, you know, all this data, you know, you just bought all this data from someone, right? And it's failed, right? I can also log out and log into another account that we have as well, just to show you, like, on larger sums of data as well. Like 59% passed on, let's say, 25,000 pieces of data. Here's 3,000 pieces of data. 58 passed. You know, 22,000 pieces of data. Only 62% passed. And so it's like, it's just repetitive, the same thing over and over again. Data is always going to be inaccurate, and if we don't make sure that we're only targeting the past data, meaning that it's valid, right, then we're wasting our time, we're burning reputation, right? Whether it's our Twilio, HUP 10 DLC compliance, or it's your email domain reputation, and you're landing it overall in spam in the long run, right? And so really just taking and actually doing this, and spending the time and spending the little money, the $10 that it costs to do, or the $40 that it costs to do it. People are skipping it because either A, they don't know, right? Or B, because it just takes too much time, right? Or they don't want to spend the extra money. And so I don't want you guys to be like that too, right? It's a waste of time when you buy all this data and you start targeting it, and the next thing you know, you're getting inferior results. I'll give you a really good example, right? Let's just say, because we have people that come into our system for bulk email, right? Email marketing, LY blasting, whatever. Those that do not clean their data and they just upload their emails into the system will show a, let's just say, less than 20% open rate on those emails. But those that clean their data before they upload into our system get above a 40%, 48%, sometimes 56% open rate. Because when you're looking at those metrics, right, and therefore when it's open more, well, you definitely get more replies as well, responses. And so you can't really track those response rates and open rates correctly if your data is inaccurate too. And the same thing goes for phone numbers and texting and other things as well. So do keep that in mind. I don't know if that helped.
No, that helps.
Yeah. But again, like, you're talking about launch control, right? I'm assuming they're the SNS blasting, correct?
Right, yep.
Okay, cool. Have you already tried them?
Nope, I'm literally, I just talked to them today, so
Okay.
I'm just trying to decide, to be quite honest with you, deciding the right CRM, and I'm in go mode right now. Like I said, I've done something. I've had good. I probably bought PPL leads. I probably bought about 30,
Hmm.
and I actually got 2 deals out of the 30, which is not
That's
so
good.
bad.
That's actually really good. But you're
Yeah.
spending anywhere between $50 to $500 depending on
Yeah,
the
I actually made
location.
50K on one deal, so I'm not mad at all.
Oh, okay. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
beautiful, beautiful. You know, amazing. Not everyone can spend that up front, you know, for the new people. So
Right.
it's definitely one of the fastest methods to get a deal, but you are going to pay for it. You know, you are going to pay for it, definitely.
Yeah, I think I was paying about, on average, about 250 a lead. So yeah,
Yeah.
it can get expensive real quick.
Yeah, 250 times 30. There's your
Right.
$7,500 right there.
Right.
Yeah.
So
But yeah. Well, I guess why stop there? If PPL is working for you, why would you switch to something else? You made 50 grand from $7,500, or maybe you said you got 2 or 3 deals, didn't you?
yeah, but I made 50 grand, then I made 2,000 on the next deal. So
Yeah, I mean that's
I
fine.
mean,
It's
I get
normal.
it, I
You're gonna
get it,
have
but
up and downs.
I was leaning more towards, to be honest with you, more towards PPC,
Mhm.
just to have something a little more consistent. And but the PPC companies, man, I just see these agency fees, and it just gets, everybody wants,
Yeah, because on top
AdWords
of
nerds start.
cost of not being profitable, they're charging you their services as well. Uh,
Right.
and I mean, there's a reason for that. We call them media buyers, right? People who know how to use Facebook ads and Google ads and know how to run those correctly. Hell, even TikTok now. We call those media buyers, right? Those people, the serious ones, the ones that really know what they're doing, those people get paid usually a salary between $150,000 to $250,000 a year because they know what they're doing. So I get why agencies charge that much, but at the end of the day, finding a good agency that's reliable, trustable, you know, credible, and so forth is the hardest part. And that's why I say if you're going to get into that, if you can learn media buying, that is the most expensive, most paid for service in the world. No matter what business you start, you'll be able to market it correctly, right? So it is something you probably want to learn on your end instead of paying somebody.
Yeah, appreciate that.
Yeah, you're welcome. But I mean, I'm still gonna go back to PPL with you and be like, you just made that kind of money. The ROI is amazing, right? Why would we shift and go a different kind of route? Is it just to have additional marketing strategies in case one just stops producing, or is it to, I don't know, to work
I don't
more?
know. Maybe I think maybe because of the one deal I bought, I started buying stuff all over the country. I went to this phase where I was just going to do some virtual stuff, which I don't like. I like to stay in the. I don't mind the Atlanta metro. You know what I mean? I'll go an hour outside of Atlanta, wherever you are, hour east, north. I don't mind that. As long as I can drive within an hour, I'm cool.
Mm-hmm.
But this happened to actually be a little. It's Hecklin, Alabama,
Mm-hmm.
a small little town, and I bought this house for 25 grand, and yeah, I sold it for 75. I actually assigned it. I mean, well, double closed, but I assigned for 50, 75. The guy put 50 grand into it. He sold it for 200. So he's a real winner. I just put 50 grand into it and made 100. But that was a one-off. All the other deals were,
Well, I mean, high risk, high reward, regardless. You know, you took the time and effort to put the 50 grand in there and the time. So, um, you know, it doesn't matter who's the winner at the end of the day, right? As long as everyone's making money, I believe, in that
that's
regard.
true.
So regardless, you made money on the deal. And like you said before, you made one deal 50K, the other one you made 2 grand. Like it
Yeah.
happens. Like sometimes you make zero. You know, it is what it is. In this game, right? If everything, I like to say this, right? If everything was going to be a success, we'd all be billionaires, right? But unfortunately, the reality is there's no such thing as 100% success, right? And so there's always risk involved, and there's always loss involved, and so forth. But I guess going back to you wanted to use launch control or a different acquisition strategy in place of PPL or in addition to. I guess why would you want to go into that headache of managing? Because like, are you going to be in the systems, or you just want to talk to the most important people?
I just want to talk to the most important people, obviously.
Which means you would be required to get a VA or
Right.
somebody to be in that
Have
system
to
for
do
you.
it. Right.
Yeah.
But the dirty work. But I don't know if I really want. I don't know, man. I'm all over the place, brother. To be honest with you.
I get it. I get it.
I mean, I am. I'm all over the place. I might get off this call and just get inspired to buy another PPL lead tonight. So I don't know.
I mean, if it's working for you, I would do the same thing, honestly.
Yeah, but I think I like some sort of. I just think I like a lot of leads coming in because then I see people trying to get
Yeah.
YouTube and like you said, TikTok. People are doing a lot of different things, but what you said was right. If you can become a great media buyer, you know how to do that.
Hmm.
Those are the winners.
Yeah, but I will say if you're whether you're paying for PPL because you're paying for that lead, right? It's like the same thing for us when we advertise on Facebook ads, you know, for the software or whatever, right? The last thing we want to do is pay that premium. Let's just say it's 100, 200, 300, $400, whatever it ends up being, to just get them in your system. The last thing you want to do is not have a back-end system that continuously follows up. We call that buy or die, you know, funnels. You know what I mean? Like that's the last thing that you don't want to have, right? And so when you use certain systems, let's say spreadsheets, right, you don't have a buyer die funnel, you're doing everything in manual, right? When you have those systems, you can create more buyer die systems. You know, endless follow-up, endless you know, basically touch points, because we know leads need additional touches, you know, over time. Just to be like, hey, we're just checking in, you know, something along those lines, or hey, did you get my offer, or are we close? Are you still motivated? You know, yada yada. You know, in that regard. Because like right now, what are you doing with those PPL leads?
Well, I had a I actually used maybe recently.
I think audio went out.
Yes, it's a CRM. I've used everything of CRM in my mind. I've used Podio, I've used Salesforce, I used recently. I just really want to offer some CRM and just like you said, and they do offer drip campaigns in there. So I'm not the best at setting stuff up on a drip campaign and automations, but like I said, I'm just getting started. No, I'm all over the place. But no, I will. I'm quick. I know Podia has a free version, which sucks. So
Yeah,
but no,
you wanna pay for the seat over there.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, in Podio, you want to pay for the seat to get
Right.
the full features. Podio is one of the best tools out there, right? So is Salesforce, but you got to build it out. You know.
You have to build it out, correct?
Yeah. I would say it's just as competitive, if not better, than high level, right? And in those things, it's just the UI is kind of nasty, you know. It's old school in that regard. So it's up to you what you're looking for. It does the most, you know. Podio definitely and Salesforce definitely do the most. You just got to build it out, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's really up to you. You know, there's no right or wrong answer. It's really just what do you really want to do, right? You said you want more leads, you know, just to be able to have more leads and work on them. Then yeah, I would definitely look for another route or go down the route of just spending more money on PPL and scaling that way. Either way works.
Yeah, it makes sense. My biggest deals came from direct mail.
Yeah.
When I had the franchise, I mean, the most I've ever spent in a month on direct, and you know, direct mail, I don't have to tell you that it's expensive. The most I've ever spent in 1 month was 10 grand. And I didn't get one deal that month, and I almost lost my shirt. But the next month I got 3 deals. So,
well, you got to think about this. You throw direct mail and you're basically fishing, right? I mean, I'm sure you've realized that over time. You're fishing and hoping someone calls you back within the 30 days and within the 90 days period. You know, they what do? They take it and they put it in their drawer, you know, until whenever they're ready. That's pretty much the thing, or they just never get it. But there's a lot of competition out there, definitely on that regard, especially those that are doing more personalized stuff with the fancy artwork mailers nowadays. So there's a big competition.
Ryan Dawsey, you know, that's him and those guys in ballpoint marketing, and everybody's getting fancy with the ink and the handwritten letters.
Yeah, I mean, you literally got some people, especially like ever since the protege stuff of buying businesses, we do techniques like, you know, sending a toilet, like a cutout image of a toilet to a plumbing company to buy their business. Well, people are doing that now with houses, you know, and so it's like a picture of a cutout house, you know. They're doing, like, they're spending the extra time and effort to go into this, and if your goal is scalability, well, then there's no way you're doing that yourself.
Well, that's a fact.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, mailers is viable. I mean, again, it's backed by money, right? Versus other methods are backed by, you know, data, you know, essentially more data, more qualified leads. Mailers is just more mailers you send out, more I guess hooks, catches, you know, essentially. So
Right.
yeah, there's no right or wrong answer. I'm not a big fan of mailers though, in my opinion though. But I don't think they're good. You just gotta have someone that's willing to answer the phone right away, immediately.
Yeah. Well, I use when I had direct mail when I was doing it. Actually, it went to my cell phone first, and then I used a company called Answer Connect, who's 24/7, 365. I'm big on answering the phone. So Answer Connect answered it after 3 rings. I don't care if it was Christmas Day. I mean, they got answered. So I've never been an advocate, even today, of going to voicemail, especially when you're in this game, especially if you're a one-man show, which at that point I was, which I still am actually, but.
Yeah. I mean, one-man show is tough regardless. Even if you get VA, you're still technically a one-man show. Yeah. Because all they do is data entry and barely vet people. Let's go with that. Yeah, I mean, one-man show, it's tough regardless. No matter which route you go, as you scale, it gets tougher and tougher. Because now you're the one doing acquisitions and dispositions, you know, yourself. Right. You know, which dispositions is a whole nother topic, you know, of its own, you know. So, but yeah, man, I mean, I guess just figure out what you want to do. There's no right or wrong answer, you know. Continue to go back to mailers, get more PPL, send, you know, try launch control, you know. I don't know about compliance on that, but if they're still working, then it should be still good. I just know everything in SMS, especially on the high level Twilio side, SMS is an issue. So
okay. All right, we'll see, brother.
Yeah, but yeah, reach out if you need anything, man. We're here for you.
All right, appreciate that.
All right, guys. Everyone else doing okay? What you guys' thoughts on what we discussed tonight? Any input you guys want to give, or any questions or concerns you guys have in your current systems? Unfortunately, I can't see the Facebook chat today, but I only got the YouTube one up. But if you guys are in here on the Zoom, you guys have anything? Everything going good on your end, Steve?
Yeah, plowing away. Got a couple of deals I'm working on, so we'll see.
Cool. Sounds good. But I think honestly today has been one of my favorite lives in general because of the topic, the on market versus the off market. I don't think anybody really talks about that, right? No one really deep dives and brings this to fruition or reality for everyone. So I'll definitely cut this one up for you know, for everyone else as a training thing when they first get into BILT. I think it's valuable, especially for those that are, I guess, lost in the sauce. We'll call it that, for them to make a decision when they're first getting started. But if we don't have any questions, guys, you know, we'll call it short today. I think it was a good key spot to enjoy the rest of our night. Let's just go with that. But if you guys have any questions at all, do not hesitate to reach out to us, reach out to our support, our chat bot, reach out to me, DM me, whatever you need. You know, of course, my calendar is always out there for you guys. Do what you guys need to do. Get your answers, your questions answered, and we'll be here for you guys. With that being said, guys, I appreciate every single one of you guys for joining today, as usual. And I will see you guys next time.